9-year-old Zara didn't walk across hotel lobbies. She processed them. She'd been doing it since she was 5, cataloging exits, reading body language, filing people into categories: harmless, interesting, threat. Her mother called it being observant. Her 3rd-grade teacher called it unnerving. Zara called it Tuesday. So when the man in the charcoal suit appeared in the entrance of the Ritz-Carlton Chicago and went completely, unnaturally still, the way predators go still, not prey, Zara noticed. She noted the suit first. Expensive, the kind that didn't come off a rack. Then the hair, dark, pulled back, and the jaw, sharp enough to cut something. Then his eyes, which had found her mother across 40 feet of marble floor and hadn't moved since. She counted to 15. He didn't blink. Now she set her hot chocolate on the side table, straightened the lapel of her navy blazer, picked up her leather notebook, always the notebook, and walked. She stopped exactly 4 feet away and looked up. The man looked down, and something happened to his face that Zara had never seen happen to a grown man's face before. Something cracked behind his eyes. Something that looked, if she had to name it, like a person recognizing their own reflection in a place they never expected to find one. She gave him 2 seconds. He didn't use them. "Excuse me," she said, her voice even and unhurried. "Why are you staring at my mom like you've seen a ghost?" Dante Reyes, head of the Reyes Syndicate, the reason 3 federal prosecutors had quietly transferred to other districts, the most feared man in Chicago, looked down at the 9-year-old girl who had just walked across a hotel lobby to confront him, and felt the floor tilt. Because those were his eyes, his jaw, his exact stillness, standing there in a navy blazer with a leather notebook under her arm, waiting, without fear, without impatience, for his answer. Mine. He didn't say it. He barely breathed it. But he knew. If you're wondering how a forbidden night, a misread look, a gas station in Tennessee, and 10 years of silence led to this moment, where a 9-year-old just stopped the most dangerous man in Chicago with one question. Stay with me. Because this story starts the way all the best ones do. With 2 people who loved each other, one conversation that went wrong, and a little girl who turned out to be smarter than both of them combined. Now, 10 years earlier, Marisol Vega was 22 years old, freshly accepted to Georgetown Law, and she was absolutely not supposed to be in that supper club in Pilsen. She was not supposed to meet him. She was not supposed to fall for him. And she was absolutely, completely, under no circumstances supposed to run from him in the middle of the night with 2 suitcases and a secret she wouldn't discover until a gas station bathroom in Tennessee. But she did all 3. And the little girl in the navy blazer who just stopped the most dangerous man in Chicago with one quiet question? She's what happened next. Stay with me. Because this story is about what fear costs you, what love survives, and what a 9-year-old with a leather notebook figures out before the adults in the room even know what questions to ask. And subscribe now so you don't miss a single detail. And if you already know this is your kind of story, drop a comment below. Tell me, Team Marisol, Team Dante, or Team Zara running the whole operation from the sidelines? 10 years earlier, the supper club on 18th Street smelled like sofrito and cigarette smoke and someone's grandmother's rice, and Marisol Vega was supposed to be there for exactly 1 hour. Her uncle had called at 7. I need you to translate. Business dinner. The client doesn't trust my English, and I don't trust my Spanish when money's involved. She'd pulled on a blazer over her Georgetown Law sweatshirt, told herself it was one night, and walked into a room where a man named Dante Reyes was sitting at the corner table like he'd been there for hours and owned the building besides. She translated for 90 minutes, but accurate, fast, invisible, exactly what she was supposed to be. Then the business concluded. Her uncle excused himself, and Dante Reyes looked at her directly for the first time all evening and said, You softened 3 of my sentences without changing a single word. She should have denied it. Your sentences needed it, she said instead. He smiled. Not the public smile she'd watched him deploy all evening. Controlled, strategic, designed. Something smaller. Private. Like she'd passed a test she hadn't known she was taking. They talked until 2 in the morning. That was October. By December, she knew how she took her coffee. 2 sugars, oat milk, never cream, because he'd asked her once, in passing, in the middle of a conversation about something else entirely, and after that, it was simply always correct when it arrived. She never mentioned it. She was almost certain he didn't realize he'd done it. That was the thing about Dante that undid her. Not the power, not the danger, not the way a room reorganized itself around him when he entered. It was the attention, the specific, unnerving quality of it. Like when he looked at you, everything else genuinely ceased to matter to him. She'd had boyfriends who listened. Dante cataloged. He remembered which passages in 100 Years of Solitude she'd argued were overwritten and brought it up 3 weeks later with a counterpoint he'd clearly been developing since. You can't rush Marquez, he said. Marquez rushes himself, she said. That's the genius and the problem. He'd laughed and she'd felt it in her sternum, and that was when she understood she was in serious trouble. 6 months of dangerous. In 6 months of a secret that lived only in stolen hours and careful silences. 6 months of being someone's entire field of vision. Then came March. She wasn't looking for anything. She came around the hallway corner in his building because she'd forgotten her jacket, and she heard the voice before she saw him. Low, cold, precise. A tone she had never heard from him. A name she didn't recognize. A verdict delivered so calmly, it took her a moment to understand it was a verdict at all. She didn't hear everything. She didn't need to. She heard enough to know that the warm man who argued about Marquez and memorized her coffee order had another face. One that made decisions about people. Final decisions. Dante turned, saw her. His face closed like a door swinging shut. Go home, Mari. Quiet. Controlled. Empty. Well, I'll call you tomorrow. He didn't call. Rosa showed up 3 days later with wild eyes and a voice pitched just above a whisper. His lieutenant has been asking questions about you, about your family. Marisol, you need to leave. 2 suitcases. Her car. I-57 south in the dark. She found out in a gas station bathroom outside of Nashville. Hands that wouldn't stop shaking. 2 lines that wouldn't stop being there. She sat on the floor of that bathroom for 45 minutes while trucks pulled in and out of the lot, and the fluorescent light buzzed overhead, and she thought about that closed door of a face and made the only calculation that felt survivable. He already decided. You are a liability. The baby makes it worse. She drove. She told herself it was logic. It was protection. Now, it was the only rational move available to a 22-year-old woman with 8 weeks of something she couldn't yet name, and a man's verdict still echoing in a hallway. She never once considered she might have misread it. Now, 10 years later, crossing a marble lobby in heels toward her 9-year-old daughter and the man she'd run from, Marisol thought, I had 10 years. I needed 10 more. She reached Zara in 11 steps. Marisol counted them because counting was something to do with her mind, while the rest of her was conducting a rapid, silent emergency assessment. Zara is fine. Zara is standing. Zara has her notebook. Dante has not moved. I am not going to survive this afternoon. And by the time she arrived at her daughter's side and took her hand, she had assembled her face into something that belonged to a professional. A professional who had not just locked eyes with the man she'd fled from a decade ago, who was not currently experiencing cardiac arrest in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton. Hi. She looked at him, neutral, measured, a woman greeting a vague acquaintance. Dante. Those dark eyes found hers. Something moved through them that she couldn't name and refused to investigate. Marisol, her full name. He'd always used her full name, never Mari in public, only in private, which meant the Mari he'd used 30 seconds ago when she was still crossing the lobby had been involuntary. She filed that away somewhere she wouldn't look at it. Small world, she said. Small world, he agreed. Then, quieter. I've been waiting for it to get smaller. Enormous world, actually, she said. You just take up too much of it. Zara, then standing at Marisol's side with her hand loosely held and her notebook against her chest, was watching this exchange the way she watched everything, with the complete, cataloging attention of someone building a case file. Marisol could feel it, the slight tilt of her daughter's head, the way her eyes moved between them, measuring, noting. She was writing something in her head. She always was. Dante looked down at Zara. Marisol's grip tightened. He crouched, slowly, deliberately, the way large, dangerous things move when they're trying not to trigger a flight response, and brought himself to eye level with a 9-year-old who did not step back, did not blink, simply redirected her full attention to him with the composure of a federal judge. I didn't get your name, he said. Zara. He repeated it. Just her name, quietly. Like he was placing it somewhere careful. Zara studied him for a moment. Then, in the tone she used for observable facts, no drama, no accusation, simply data being reported, she said, You have the same eyes as me. That's statistically unusual for strangers. The lobby went very still. Somewhere behind them, an elevator chimed. Someone's luggage wheels crossed the marble, the ordinary sounds of an ordinary afternoon, completely indifferent to the fact that the world had just tilted on its axis. She knows. The thought moved through Dante like cold water. She's 9 years old and she already knows. He stood slowly. His eyes went back to Marisol. She was already pivoting. Professional emergency, she was saying. The words arriving smooth and practiced. The voice of a woman who argued in federal court for a living. Big day tomorrow. See, preparation required. So good to see him, genuinely, take care of himself. We need to talk. Not loud, not aggressive. The specific quiet of a man who did not need volume to be heard. She stopped. We really don't. He looked at Zara, back at Marisol. The geometry of it was simple and devastating, and they both knew it. I think we do. Zara, who had been silent for approximately as long as she ever was, opened her notebook, looked down, wrote something with the focused economy of someone logging a field observation. You should probably say yes, Mom, she said without looking up. He's not going to stop. Marisol stared at her daughter. How do you know that? Zara looked up. His left hand hasn't moved since you tried to leave. She glanced at Dante's hand, still loose at his side, exactly as it had been. By patient people are the most dangerous kind. A beat. You taught me that. The silence lasted 4 full seconds. 1 hour, Marisol said finally. The words came out like a controlled demolition, precise, reluctant, inevitable. Lobby restaurant, 1 hour. Dante nodded. Zara was already closing her notebook and heading toward the restaurant like she'd been expecting this outcome all along. Which, Marisol realized with the exhaustion that went all the way down to her bones, she probably had. Zara had chosen the corner table. Marisol hadn't directed her to it, hadn't directed her to anything, had in fact been hoping to exert at least minimal control over one variable in this afternoon, but Zara had walked into the restaurant, assessed the room in approximately 4 seconds, and selected the table with the best sight lines and the most acoustic privacy, because of course she had. The notebook was on the table before the waiter arrived, centered, deliberate, like a legal exhibit being entered into evidence. Dante looked at it. What's in there? Observations. About what? Zara looked at him with the patience of someone explaining something obvious. Everything. She opened it to a fresh page, wrote the date in the top right corner. Neat, small, precise. Then she set down her pen, folded her hands, and looked at him across the table. You can start. Marisol watched Dante Reyes, a man who had, by conservative estimate, made federal prosecutors rearrange their career trajectories, take a brief, almost imperceptible moment to reorient. She recognized the moment. She'd had it herself, repeatedly. I'd across 9 years of parenting. It was the moment you understood that the usual rules did not apply. He started to speak to Marisol, something measured, careful. She could see him constructing it. But before the first sentence completed, Zara's pen touched paper. What field are you in? General terms are fine. Dante paused. Asset management. Private? Very. Competitive industry, Zara noted, writing. What was your relationship with your father like? A beat. Why? I'm gathering context. We were... He seemed to consider the word carefully. Complicated. Noted. She wrote something. Any heritable medical conditions I should be aware of? Marisol pressed 2 fingers to her temple. Zara. Genetic history is medically relevant, Mom. She didn't look up. Cardiovascular. A neurological. Broad strokes is fine. Dante looked at Marisol with an expression she hadn't seen on his face before. Not quite helplessness. He was too controlled for helplessness. More like a man watching a chessboard rearrange itself into a configuration his training hadn't covered. She's always like this, Marisol said quietly. I'm right here, Zara said pleasantly. Dante set down his water glass and looked at Marisol directly. The pleasantries, such as they were over. When were you going to tell me? Marisol opened her mouth. The deflection was already assembled. Professional grade, battle-tested. She wasn't. Zara, not looking up, pen moving. Zara, it's a factual statement. She turned a page. You've avoided the topic of my father my entire life. I asked twice, once when I was 6, once when I was 8. Both times you gave me answers that were technically responsive and completely uninformative. She paused. I've made inferences. The table went quiet. Dante had gone very still. The particular stillness Marisol remembered, total considered, the stillness of a man processing information he intended to act on. What inferences? He said. Zara looked up. She considered him for a moment with those dark eyes. His eyes, Marisol thought, for the 100th time, his exact eyes, and said that he was either dangerous, dead, or didn't know. A brief pause. Based on current data, I'm updating my hypothesis. Dante turned to Marisol slowly. What was on his face was not anger. Anger would have been easier. Anger was a thing she knew how to meet, how to defend against, how to stand up inside of. This was something underneath anger. On something that had been waiting 10 years for a surface to land on and had just found one. 10 years, he said. I was protecting her. His jaw tightened. Not a flinch, a reckoning. From me. Not a question. Not yet a verdict. Something suspended between them, unresolved. Too large for a hotel restaurant, and 1 hour and a 9-year-old taking careful notes. Zara wrote something in her notebook, read it back silently, clicked her pen closed. This, she said, with the calm authority of someone who had been observing since the moment they sat down, is going to take more than one meeting. And she was right. Because what none of them knew yet, not Dante with his 10 years of searching, not Marisol with her 10 years of running, not even Zara with her 4 pages of careful observations, was that the truth hadn't finished arriving yet. And there was still Rosa. There was still one phone call that would rewrite everything Marisol thought she understood about the night she ran, and when it came, it wouldn't arrive quietly. If you want to know what Rosa knew and why it changes absolutely everything, subscribe now. What lands next, and I promise you, you will want to return. She called Rosa at 8:15 after the bath was running and Zara was in it, and the sound of water through the wall was the only thing keeping Marisol's breathing regulated. Dialed, listened to 3 rings. "How'd the hearing prep go?" Rosa answered, easy, familiar, completely ordinary. Rosa. Just the name. The way she said it apparently communicated everything, because the ease on the other end evaporated instantly. "What happened?" Not a question. I saw Dante. Silence. The specific quality of silence that isn't empty, that's full of something being held very carefully in place. "Mari!" He was in the hotel lobby. He saw me. She kept her voice level, professional, the voice she used in courtrooms when the other side introduced something she hadn't anticipated. He saw Zara. More silence. Longer this time. "Rosa." Marisol's voice dropped. He knew. The moment he looked at her, he knew. She looks exactly... She stopped. Started again. "I need you to tell me something honestly. I need you to think back 10 years and tell me the truth." A breath on the other end. Shaky. The kind that precedes something a person has been holding for a very long time. What did Marco actually want? The silence that followed lasted long enough that Marisol pulled the phone from her ear to check the call was still connected. Then Rosa said very quietly, "Mari, I'm so sorry." And Marisol understood, before another word came, that the floor was about to move. Marco hadn't been investigating her as a threat. He hadn't been building a case, compiling information, doing the quiet preliminary work that preceded someone disappearing. He'd been trying to reach her, on Dante's behalf. Dante had sent him, immediately, Rosa said, within hours of Marisol going quiet, to find her, to bring her back, to tell her that whatever she'd overheard, whatever she thought she'd understood, he was not going to let his family anywhere near her. Rosa had panicked. She'd seen what orbiting the Reyes family did to people, had grown up watching what happened to the ones who got close and then became inconvenient. She'd looked at Marco asking questions about her cousin, and she'd seen a verdict being executed. She hadn't waited for context. She'd driven to Marisol's apartment with wild eyes and a story that was true in structure and catastrophically wrong in meaning. "I thought I was saving you," Rosa said. Her voice was breaking. "I thought if they were asking questions it meant, you told me to run." Marisol heard her own voice from a great distance, flat, precise. "You told me his lieutenant was asking about my family. I thought..." "I know what you thought. Mari, I know. I'm so sorry." She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time after she hung up. She wasn't angry. She understood in a distant, a clinical way that anger was available to her, at Rosa, at the situation, at the specific cruelty of a misunderstanding that had compounded daily for 10 years. But what she actually felt was quieter than anger, more structural, like discovering that the building you'd been living in was load-bearing on a wall that didn't exist. She had not protected Zara from a man who wanted them gone. She had hidden Zara from a man who was trying to find them. The bathroom door opened. Zara emerged in pajamas, hair damp, notebook already in hand out of pure habit. She crossed the room, looked at her mother's face with those careful dark eyes, and sat down beside her on the bed without a word. They stayed like that for a moment. "Something changed," Zara said finally. Marisol nodded. "Why does it change what we do next?" "I don't know yet." Zara accepted this with a small nod and leaned gently against her mother's arm. 3 minutes later, someone knocked on the hotel room door. Marisol opened it. Dante stood in the hallway. His face was not the controlled, measured face from the lobby or the restaurant. It was something rawer than that, something that told her before he said a single word that Marco had already called him. that he already knew what she knew, that they were, for the first time in 10 years, standing on the same side of the truth. Zara's voice came from somewhere behind Marisol, calm and immediate. "He can come in. I'll make tea." Marisol didn't move for a moment. That just stood in the doorway with Dante on one side and her daughter on the other, and the specific absurdity of her life pressing in from all directions. She stepped back. He came in. The hotel room was not built for this. It was built for one attorney and one 9-year-old on a 3-day business trip. Rolling suitcase in the corner, Zara's notebook on the nightstand, case files fanned across the small table by the window. Dante stood in the middle of it and looked, for the first time since Marisol had seen him in that lobby, slightly uncertain. Like a man who had prepared for a confrontation and arrived at something more complicated. Zara materialized from the bathroom with 2 mugs and the hotel kettle, moving with the focused efficiency of someone who had decided that tea was the correct response to this situation and was not entertaining alternative hypotheses. She set a mug in front of each of them, looked at the table, looked at her mother, looked at Dante, pulled out her phone, set a timer for 20 minutes, placed it face up between them like a referee dropping a flag. "I'll be in the bedroom," she said. "I'd recommend using the time well." The bedroom door closed. Seconds later, through the wall, a podcast began, something measured and calm. The words conflict and resolution were audible before the volume adjusted. Marisol almost laughed. Almost. Dante sat. She sat. 20 minutes on the clock. He spoke first and he didn't perform it. That was the thing she hadn't expected. No architecture to it, no strategy. In just a man at a small hotel table telling her what happened after she left. He'd spent 3 weeks thinking she was in danger. Had Marco searching every contact, every thread. Then the searches came back empty. Not can't find her empty, but someone left deliberately empty. No accident, no coercion. Just gone. "I thought you ran from me," he said. "From what you heard. From what I am." A pause. "I thought you made your choice." He'd been angry for 3 years. Then the anger had nowhere left to go, and he'd just become a man with a hole where something used to be. Running an empire with both hands and nothing that felt like a reason. He didn't know about Zara. "If I had..." His voice stopped. Something moved through his jaw. "I would have burned everything down to get to you, both of you. Nothing in my world would have mattered more. Nothing." He said it the way he said everything. Quietly, without embellishment. Which meant she believed it completely. She told him what Rosa told her. Watched his face the way she'd watched opposing counsel for 9 years. Not for the obvious tells, but for the small ones. The ones people didn't know they were making. She saw exactly where it landed. "You thought I sent Marco to..." "I thought you'd already decided," she said. "That look on your face in the hallway, the way you closed. I thought that was a verdict." A long silence. "Based on one look," he said. "You have a very final face." Something moved through his expression. Not collapse. He didn't collapse. But the space just behind his eyes shifted, like a room rearranging itself after something heavy had been removed from it. "Not for you," he said quietly. That was never..." "Mari, not for you." They sat with it. 10 years of wreckage spread across a small hotel table between 2 mugs of mediocre tea, a timer counting down, a podcast murmuring through the wall. Not forgiveness, not resolution, not even the beginning of either, but the first conversation they'd ever had where both of them were standing on the same facts. When the timer went off, Zara's voice came immediately through the door. "Time. How'd we do?" Dante looked at Marisol. Something in his face that was almost, not quite, but almost, like the man who had argued about Marquez until 2 in the morning in a supper club on 18th Street. "Progress," Marisol said. A pause. Then, quietly satisfied, "I'll log that." Zara had 3 objections to the morning's arrangement and chose not to raise any of them. Under Objection 1, her mother had barely slept. Objection 2, the federal hearing was at 9, and Marisol had been reviewing notes since 6, with the focused misery of someone who could not afford to be distracted, and was extremely distracted. Objection 3, Dante Reyes was still in this hotel, which meant last night had not resolved itself into a neat conclusion the way Zara had tentatively hoped. None of these objections would help, so she kept them in the notebook, mentally, and ate her breakfast. The arrangement surfaced at 7:50. Dante appeared at the door. He'd called ahead, which Zara noted as a point in his favor, and offered to stay with her while Marisol was in the hearing. Marisol said no. Immediately, reflexively, with the specific energy of a woman who had been saying no to this man for 10 years and found it the only reliable defense available. "It's fine, Mom," Zara said. "I'll observe him." Dante looked at Marisol. "She'll observe me." Her mother stood in the doorway of the bathroom in her hearing suit and looked at the two of them, Zara on the bed with her notebook, Dante in the doorway with his hands loose at his sides, and something happened to her face. Not quite terror. Not quite surrender. The specific expression of a person recognizing something they cannot unknow. She left at 8:05. Zara locked the door behind her and turned around. "Chess," she said. "Can you play?" He could play. That was the first useful data point. He won the first game in 11 moves, which Zara found instructive. He hadn't sandbagged. That hadn't softened it. Hadn't done the thing adults did when they played children and wanted to seem encouraging. He'd simply played. She noted this approvingly and reset the board. She won the second game in 14. He sat back and looked at her with an expression she hadn't seen from him yet. Not the controlled assessment from the lobby, not the rawness from last night. Something more straightforward than either, like a person recalibrating without minding that they had to. "You set that up 3 moves before I saw it," he said. 4, actually. He nodded slowly, looked at the board, looked at her. She let him look. Room service arrived at 10. Zara had ordered for both of them. She'd asked his preferences first, which he answered without making it strange. Another point logged, and they ate at the small desk by the window with the chessboard pushed to one side. He asked about her school. She told him, accelerated program, adequate. The math curriculum was 18 months behind where she actually was, but the humanities were acceptable. He asked about the notebook. She explained the organizational system, observations indexed by subject, cross-referenced by date, flagged entries in red for patterns that required follow-up. "What do you want to be?" he asked. "When you're older." She considered the honest answer. "A federal judge," she said, "or a crime novelist, depending on how things go." He laughed. Not the polite laugh adults produced when children said unexpected things. A real one, surprised out of him, brief and genuine. She filed it. Laughs when caught off guard. Doesn't try to recover it. Good sign. She put her fork down. "Did you know about me?" He held her gaze the way she'd noticed he held everything, directly, without flinching. "No." She studied him. "Are you angry that she didn't tell you?" A pause. Longer than his previous answers. "Yes." "Are you angry at her?" The longest pause yet, something working behind his eyes. "I'm trying not to be." Zara considered this. It was, she thought, the most honest answer available to him. More honest than no, which would have been false. More honest than yes, which would have been incomplete. "That's the right answer," she said. She picked up her fork. "For now." Her mother came back at 12:40. The door opened quietly. Marisol always moved quietly when she wasn't sure what she was walking into. And Zara heard her stop. She didn't look up. Neither did Dante. They were at the desk, Zara walking him through the notebook's cross-referencing system, Dante listening with his full attention and writing something in the margin of the hotel notepad she'd given him to follow along. 3 seconds passed. 4. 5. Zara looked up then and caught her mother's face in the fraction of a second before Marisol knew she'd been seen. She didn't have a word for the expression exactly, but she logged it carefully in the notebook later. Something settled, like a thing that had been waiting a long time to put itself down. The hearing had not gone the way Marisol planned. Not badly. She'd held the thread, made the arguments. She kept her face arranged into the expression of a woman who was completely present and not conducting a parallel internal crisis about the man currently sitting with her daughter 17 floors up. She'd done what she was there to do. But opposing counsel had looked at her differently in the afternoon session, a specific kind of differently. The way people looked at you when they'd learned something about you between morning and afternoon that they were deciding how to use. She found out why at 4 o'clock, when her supervising partner called. Someone on the opposing side had pulled sealed federal records. A decade-old investigation into the Reyes syndicate, broad, sprawling, ultimately inconclusive, that had collected the names of associated civilians as a matter of procedure. Her name was on page 47. Associated civilian witness. Non-cooperative. Location unconfirmed. She'd been 22. She hadn't even known the investigation existed. "It's probably nothing," her partner said. "But I'd be careful." She was already moving toward the elevator. Her phone buzzed in the lobby. Zara. Text message, sent with the same tone her daughter used for everything. Factual, unhurried, faintly editorial. "Two men have been in the lobby for 47 minutes without ordering anything. Statistically unusual for a hotel restaurant. Booth by the east window. Thought you should know." Marisol stopped walking, scanned the lobby without appearing to scan it, a skill she'd developed in courtrooms and apparently needed now in hotels, and found them. 2 men, booth by the east window, coffee cups that hadn't moved. Not police. And she knew what police looked like at rest. These men had a different quality of stillness. She found Dante at the elevator bank, where he'd been waiting since she'd texted him from the hearing. She showed him her phone without a word. The change in him was not dramatic. That was the thing. She'd expected something visible, some shift in posture or expression that telegraphed danger. Instead, he simply became more precise, like a lens adjusting focus. Everything that was not immediately relevant seemed to fall away, and what remained was a man who had been running this city for 15 years and was very, very good at it. He made 2 calls, quiet, brief, in a register she couldn't quite follow. He didn't raise his voice once. The men left within 10 minutes. She watched them go. They watched Dante end his second call and slide the phone back into his jacket pocket with the same unhurried ease he did everything, and she felt 2 things simultaneously in a way that was deeply inconvenient. Relief, clean and immediate, and something unsettling beneath it. The recognition that she had spent 10 years carefully constructing a life outside this world. A legal career, a Chicago apartment, a daughter with a leather notebook who read case files for fun. And this world had walked straight through the lobby doors of her professional life because her own name was on a document she hadn't known existed. The danger had never been only his. It had been adjacent to her the entire time, and she'd been too busy maintaining the fiction of distance to notice. Zara was in the bedroom when they got back, doing homework apparently, and with a focus that Marisol recognized as deliberate, giving them the room without making it obvious she was giving them the room. "This can't become our life," Marisol said quietly. "It already is your life." Not unkind, just accurate, which was worse. "You practice criminal defense, Mari. You have sealed federal files with my family's name on them. You were never outside this world." A pause. "You just pretended you were." She hated that there was no available counter-argument. Zara appeared in the doorway in the specific way she appeared in doorways, silently, completely, as if she'd been there for a while. "For what it's worth," she said, "I've always known our life was complicated." A beat. "I just didn't know the specifics." She considered this. "I prefer the specifics." She went back to her homework. Dante looked at Marisol, and for the first time across 3 days of confrontation and confession and chess games and tea timers, he didn't move toward anything, didn't press, didn't position. He just said, "Let me be in her life, that's all I'm asking." A request. Plain and open, with nothing behind it but the ask itself. Marisol looked at him for a long moment. She didn't answer, but she didn't say no. Dante Reyes, age 37, confirmed. Occupation, complicated. Relationship to subject, TBD, trending toward permanent. Threat level to mom, 0, revised from previous assessment. Threat level to the men who showed up in the hotel lobby, very high, noted for future reference. Personal qualities, patient, honest when cornered, good at chess, bad at hiding when he's worried. Makes mom laugh when she thinks I'm not watching. Assessment, keep. Zara had written it on a Tuesday. The third Tuesday, specifically, the one where he'd arrived at school pickup with 2 coffees and given her the one with the good chocolate because he'd remembered from a single offhand comment 2 weeks ago that she preferred it. She'd noted this under personal qualities and revised her overall assessment upward. She left the notebook on the kitchen table by accident. Or possibly not by accident. She was still deciding. Her mother found it at 7:15, still in her work blazer, bag not yet set down, just stopped at the kitchen table the way you stopped when something caught you mid-motion. Zara watched from the hallway, watched her read, watched her sit down slowly, the bag sliding off her shoulder and landing on the floor unnoticed. She gave her a full minute. Then she walked in. He poured herself a glass of water and sat down across from her. Her mother looked up. "You wrote keep." "He's earned provisional status," Zara said. Something moved across her mother's face. The particular expression that preceded laughing when her mother was trying not to. Zara had cataloged it at age 6, and it remained consistent. It broke through anyway, brief and real. "You're 9. My emotional intelligence," Zara said, "is not age-dependent." Her mother looked at her for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and put her hand over Zara's and didn't say anything, which was its own kind of answer. Dante came at 8. He did that now. Tuesdays for pickup, Thursdays he called, weekends when Marisol said it was all right, which was becoming more often than not. Never early, never late. Never pushing past whatever boundary was currently in place. Zara had logged this consistency under patient and underlined it twice. She let them have the balcony. She could see them from the hallway if she stood at the right angle, which she did, briefly, for observational purposes only. Her mother leaning against the railing, looking at the city. Dante beside her, not quite touching. The Chicago skyline doing what it always did, glittering, indifferent. Enormous. She heard his voice, low. Couldn't make out the words. Then her mother's, quiet. Then, "I'm not ready." A pause. His voice again, 2 words. "I know." And then, "I'll be here." Zara considered this for a moment, walked to the balcony doorway in her pajamas and assessed the situation, 6 inches between them, maybe 5.5. "You're closer than last Tuesday," she said. "Dick, I'm logging this as progress." She went back inside, let the door close behind her. She heard, in the silence that followed, nothing dramatic, no declarations, no resolution that wrapped itself neatly. Just the city, and 2 people on a balcony, and then the quiet sound of presence, steady, chosen, still there. She picked up her notebook, turned to the very first page, the entry she'd written at 7 years old before she had context, before she had data, before she had anything except the observation of a child who noticed everything and wrote it down because writing made it real. Subject, my father. Status, unknown. Notes. Mom gets sad on Sunday evenings. She doesn't know I notice. I think she misses someone. I hope someday she finds him again. She looked at it for a moment, drew a small, neat check mark beside it. Case closed, she wrote underneath. Then, because she was precise about these things, she added, for now. And that's where we leave them. Not with a perfect ending, because the best stories rarely have those. They have honest ones. Two people who lost 10 years to a misread look and one night of silence, standing 5.5 inches apart on a Chicago balcony, choosing, carefully, to stay. And a 9-year-old with a leather notebook who saw the whole thing coming before either of them did. If Zara's notebook made you smile, if Dante's patience made you hold your breath, if Marisol's journey from that gas station in Tennessee to that balcony made you feel something real, then this story did exactly what it was supposed to do. Drop a comment and tell me, what was the moment that got you? The lobby confrontation? The Rosa call? The chess game? At the check mark on page 1? I want to know. And if you're new here, this is the kind of story we tell in this space. Second chances that had to be earned. Love that survived being misunderstood. Children who are wiser than the adults around them and know it, and are gracious enough not to say so too often. If that's your kind of story, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.